I paid for the whole family's Christmas vacation, and my son said I should have stayed home so they could have some free time. The words hit me like a slap across the face. I still felt them burning 3,000 miles later, sitting alone in that overpriced airport chair. Today, I'm going to tell you something I never thought I would share. And if for even a second this feels familiar, I only ask that you like this video and subscribe. It will help me keep opening my heart. My name is Helen, and I'm 72 years old. I live in a cramped one-bedroom apartment in Astoria, Queens, where the radiator clanks all night and the smell of Mrs. Chen's dumplings seeps through the thin walls. Every morning, I wake up to the sound of the Q70 bus rumbling down Northern Boulevard, carrying people to places where they matter. For the longest time, I thought I mattered too. I thought wrong. The morning I booked that Christmas vacation, I was sitting at my scratched kitchen table, staring at my bank statement. $23,000 for a week-long family trip to Lake George. 7 people. 3 generations. One foolish woman who still believed that love could be purchased with frequent flyer miles and luxury cabin rentals. I remember dialing the travel agency with shaking fingers. The young woman on the phone was so cheerful. "Oh, how wonderful that you're treating your whole family to Christmas in the mountains. They must be so grateful." Grateful. I held on to that word like a lifeline. You see, I've lived in New York City for 47 years. I came here as a young bride in 1976, when my husband Robert got a job at Con Edison. We rented a tiny studio in Woodside for $300 a month. I thought we'd take on the world together. I thought we had forever. Robert died in 1986. Brain aneurysm. One minute he was reading the daily news at our kitchen table, complaining about the Mets' terrible season. The next minute, he was gone. Just like that. The doctors said he didn't suffer. I've been suffering ever since. But I didn't have time to fall apart. I had 3 children to raise. Sarah was 14, Michael was 12, and little Jennifer was only 8. The life insurance barely covered the funeral costs. Our modest savings disappeared faster than snow in spring. I took a job cleaning offices in Midtown Manhattan, for in the morning to noon, Monday through Friday. Then I'd rush home, shower, and head to my second job at Macy's in Herald Square until 9 at night. Weekends, I cleaned houses in Forest Hills for families who had more money than I'd ever dreamed of. Every paycheck went to my children. Piano lessons for Sarah. Baseball equipment for Michael. Art supplies for Jennifer. Private tutoring when they struggled in school. Designer clothes so they wouldn't feel different from their classmates. College funds that I built dollar by dollar, overtime hour by overtime hour. I told myself it was an investment in their future. I told myself they'd remember my sacrifices when they were grown. I told myself that love meant giving until there was nothing left to give. I was wrong about that too. Sarah was the first to leave for college. Columbia University, pre-law. $50,000 a year, even with partial scholarships. I cashed out my retirement fund to cover it. "Don't worry, Mom," she said, hugging me at the dorm. "I'll make you proud. I'll take care of you someday." Michael followed 2 years later. NYU Business School. Even more expensive. I took out a second mortgage on our tiny apartment. The interest rates were killing me, but I signed anyway. He promised he'd help pay it back once he graduated and got his MBA. Jennifer was my baby. My artist. She wanted to go to Parsons School of Design. The tuition was astronomical. By then, I was working 3 jobs just to keep up with my other children's expenses. I sold my wedding ring to help cover her first semester. "Mom, you're the best," she whispered, tears in her eyes as I drove her to orientation. I'll never forget this. But they did forget. All of them. Sarah graduated and got a job at a prestigious law firm in Manhattan. 6-figure salary right out of the gate. She moved to a fancy apartment on the Upper West Side. I was still living in Queens, still cleaning offices, still paying off the loans I'd taken for her education. "I'm just getting established, Mom," she'd say whenever I hinted that maybe she could help with expenses. "Give me a few years to get on my feet." Michael found work at a hedge fund in Brooklyn. He bought a BMW before he'd been employed for 6 months. Designer suits. Expensive dinners. Weekend trips to the Hamptons with his new girlfriend. "I've got student loans too, you know," he'd remind me when I mentioned that I was struggling to pay the mortgage. "We're all in debt here." Jennifer became a freelance graphic designer. She shared a trendy loft in Williamsburg with 3 roommates. Her Instagram was full of artisanal coffee shops and gallery openings. She never seemed to have money for rent, though. I sent her $500 almost every month, just so she could chase her dreams. The years blurred together. Christmas mornings when I'd arrive with bags full of expensive gifts and leave with a tired hug and a "Thanks, Mom." Birthday dinners where I'd pick up the check while they complained about their own financial pressures. Family gatherings where I'd sit quietly in the corner, listening to their success stories while they forgot to ask about my life. I retired at 68, not by choice. The cleaning company downsized, and they said I was too old for the physical demands. My social security barely covered my rent and basic expenses. I started tutoring neighborhood kids in English, $10 an hour, cash under the table. Sarah got married that year. The wedding cost $40,000. I paid for the flowers and the photographer because it would mean so much to have you contribute, Mom. I wore a dress I'd bought at a thrift shop on Queens Boulevard, standing in the back during photos because I didn't want to embarrass anyone. Michael proposed to his girlfriend 6 months later. She wanted a destination wedding in Napa Valley. Just immediate family, he said. You understand. The flight alone would have cost me $800. I sent them a check for $2,000 instead and spent their wedding day eating canned soup in my apartment. Jennifer moved in with her boyfriend, an aspiring musician who seemed allergic to steady employment. She called me crying at least once a month. Mom, I know I shouldn't ask, but could you help us out? Just until Marcus gets his big break. I always said yes. Always. The breaking point came last Christmas. I'd been planning this family vacation for months. Not just any vacation, mind you. A real celebration. A rented cabin on Lake George with enough bedrooms for everyone. Gourmet meals delivered daily. Activities for the grandchildren I barely got to see. 7 days of what I foolishly imagined would be quality time together. I booked everything in advance. First-class flights for everyone because Sarah said Coach was too uncomfortable with her bad back. The most expensive cabin I could find because Michael said his kids needed their own game room. Spa appointments for the women because Jennifer said she'd been so stressed lately. I paid for everything. Every single penny came from my meager savings, from the little bit of money I'd managed to squirrel away from my tutoring jobs and the few stocks Robert had left me. 2 days before we were supposed to leave, Sarah called. Mom, I hope you won't be offended, but we've been thinking. Maybe this vacation would be more relaxing if it was just our generation and the kids. You know, less stress about dietary restrictions and early bedtimes. I felt something crack inside my chest. Something small but vital. I've already paid for everything, I whispered. Oh, we know. And we're so grateful. We really are. But maybe you could enjoy the money you'd save by staying home? Take yourself out to a nice dinner or something. Take myself out to a nice dinner. With what money? The money I'd already spent on their ungrateful vacation? But I didn't say that. I never said what I really thought. Instead, I said, if that's what you want. You're the best, Mom. Really. We'll bring you back something special. Something special. Like I was a child being placated with a souvenir. That night, I sat in my living room, surrounded by the wrapped Christmas gifts I'd bought for grandchildren I wouldn't get to see open them. Through my thin walls, I could hear Mrs. Chen's family laughing over dinner. Her daughter had driven in from New Jersey with her own children. They were loud and chaotic and joyful. I hadn't heard laughter in my apartment in years. I opened my laptop and canceled my portion of the trip. The airline charged me a change fee that ate up 2 weeks of tutoring income. The cabin was already paid for, of course. Non-refundable. Christmas morning came gray and cold. I sat at my kitchen table, drinking coffee from a mug Sarah had given me years ago. World's best mom, it said in fading letters. My phone buzzed once. A group text from the cabin. Having an amazing time. Wish you were here, with a photo of them all gathered around a massive Christmas tree I'd paid for, in front of a fireplace I'd paid for, wearing new ski clothes they'd bought with money they'd saved by not having me there. I stared at that photo for a long time. My children looked so happy. So relaxed. So free. Free from me. Michael had texted me separately the night before. Hope you understand, Mom. We just need some family time without having to worry about entertaining you. You get it, right? Without having to worry about entertaining me. As if my presence at my own family's Christmas vacation was a burden to be managed. I set the phone down and walked to my bedroom closet. In the back, behind my winter coats, I kept a shoebox full of old photos. Pictures from when the kids were small. Birthday parties and school plays and family trips to Coney Island when money was tight but love felt abundant. There was one photo I couldn't stop looking at. Christmas 1992. The kids were still children then, gathered around our tiny artificial tree in our old apartment. I was kneeling behind them, my arms wrapped around all three, my face bright with exhaustion but glowing with purpose. When had I become so invisible? When had the woman in that photo disappeared completely? I thought about Robert suddenly. How he used to call me his warrior queen, because I could stretch $1 until it screamed. How he'd massage my aching shoulders after long days of work and tell me I was the strongest woman he'd ever known. You give too much, Helen, he'd said near the end, when the cancer was eating him alive but he was still worried about me. Promise me you won't disappear into other people's needs. I'd broken that promise every day for 36 years. The phone rang. Jennifer, calling from the cabin. Mom, we're having such a good time. Marcus is actually getting along with Michael for once, and Sarah's kids are obsessed with the hot tub. Oh, and Mom? Could you Venmo me $300? We found this cute little boutique in town and I saw the perfect dress. $300. For a dress. While I was eating peanut butter sandwiches for dinner to make my grocery budget stretch. Please, Jennifer. I don't have it right now. Oh, come on. You just saved a fortune by not coming on the trip. Don't be so stingy. Stingy. I'd paid $23,000 for their vacation, and I was being stingy. Something inside me snapped. Not broke, exactly. Snapped into place. Like a bone setting after a long fracture. No, I said. What? I said no. I don't have $300 to give you for a dress. Mom, what's wrong with you? It's Christmas. Exactly. It's Christmas. And I'm sitting alone in my apartment because my own family decided I'd be more comfortable at home. There was silence on the other end. Then, you're being dramatic. We never said you couldn't come. You said I should stay home so you could have some free time. That's not, look, you're taking this the wrong way. We love you. You just what, Jennifer? We just need space to be ourselves sometimes. Without having to worry about whether you're having fun or if the food is too spicy for you or if you need help climbing stairs. We're on vacation. We want to relax. There it was. The truth I'd been avoiding for years. I wasn't a family member to them. I was a responsibility. An obligation. A burden that occasionally came with financial benefits. I hung up the phone. For the first time in decades, I hung up on one of my children. And you know what? The world didn't end. I made myself a proper dinner that night. Not fancy, but proper. I set the table with my good china, the wedding set Robert and I had registered for 47 years ago. I lit a candle. I poured myself a glass of wine from a bottle I'd been saving for a special occasion. What could be more special than the first night I chose myself? They came back from the vacation 3 days later. I knew because Jennifer posted approximately 4,000 photos on Facebook. Everyone looked tanned and happy and well fed. There were shots of gourmet meals and spa treatments and family board game nights around the fireplace. Not one of them called to tell me they were home. Sarah finally texted on New Year's Eve. Thanks again for the amazing trip, Mom. Really generous of you. Hope you had a nice quiet Christmas. A nice quiet Christmas. As if loneliness was a gift I'd given myself. But something had shifted during those days of silence. I'd stopped checking my phone every 5 minutes. I'd stopped jumping every time it rang, hoping it would be one of them finally choosing to include me in their lives. I'd started taking long walks around the neighborhood instead. Exploring parts of Astoria I'd never bothered to see before. I discovered a small Greek cafe on Ditmars Boulevard where the owner, Maria, knew everyone's order by heart. She started saving me a table by the window every Tuesday and Thursday. Where's your family? She asked one afternoon, her voice gentle. Busy, I said. She nodded, understanding everything in that single syllable. Mine too. But you know what I learned? Some people, they think love means taking. But real love, it means choosing. Every day, they choose you. Not your money. Not what you can do for them. You. I started crying right there in her cafe. Ugly, shoulder-shaking sobs that I'd been holding in for months. Maria brought me another cup of coffee and a small plate of baklava. On the house, she said. For someone who's been giving everyone else the honey and forgetting to taste it herself. I began seeing a therapist in February. Dr. Rodriguez, a kind woman in her 50s who specialized in family dynamics and trauma recovery. Her office was in a converted brownstone in Woodside, just a 15-minute bus ride from my apartment. Tell me about your relationship with your children, she said during our first session. I started talking and didn't stop for 40 minutes. About the sacrifices and the silence. About the money and the manipulation. About the growing certainty that I'd raised 3 successful adults who saw me as nothing more than a convenient ATM. Helen, she said when I finally stopped for breath, when was the last time one of your children asked about your needs? Your dreams? Your happiness? I sat there for a long moment, searching my memory. I can't remember, I finally admitted. That's not normal. You know that, right? Parent-child relationships should be reciprocal, especially in adulthood. You're not an endless resource to be mined. You're a human being with your own value, independent of what you can provide for others. It was the first time in years anyone had acknowledged that I might have needs of my own. I started setting boundaries. Small ones at first. When Michael called asking for money to cover his son's private school tuition, I said I needed to think about it. When Jennifer wanted me to fly out to Los Angeles to help her move apartments, I reminded her that I couldn't afford the flight. What's gotten into you lately? Sarah asked during one of our increasingly tense phone calls. You're being so negative. Negative. Because I'd started saying no to requests that would have bankrupted me. I'm being realistic, I told her. I'm 72 years old, living on Social Security and tutoring income. I can't keep subsidizing everyone else's lifestyle choices. Lifestyle choices? Mom, these aren't luxuries. These are basic needs. A $5,000 handbag is a basic need. That was a birthday gift to myself. I work hard. So did I. For 40 years. Where's my $5,000 handbag? She hung up on me that time. The breaking point came in April. Jennifer called, sobbing, saying she needed $5,000 for some vague emergency. She wouldn't give me details, just kept repeating that she was desperate and I was the only one who could help. Jennifer, I need to know what this is for. Does it matter? I'm your daughter. I'm asking for help. It matters because $5,000 is more than I make in 3 months of tutoring. If I give you that money, I'll have to choose between groceries and medication for the rest of the year. Then get another job. Get another job. At 72. As if employment opportunities were abundant for septuagenarian former cleaning ladies. No, I said. What do you mean, no? I mean no. I'm not giving you $5,000. I can't afford it, and even if I could, I'm done being your emergency fund. I can't believe how selfish you're being. After everything we've been through together. Everything we've been through together. As if our relationship was something that had happened to both of us, rather than something I'd been carrying alone for decades. You're right, I said. We have been through a lot together. But the person who's been through the most is me. And I'm tired. The phone went dead. That evening, I walked to the Astoria Park and sat by the East River, watching the Manhattan skyline light up as the sun set. A young mother was pushing her toddler on the swings nearby. The child was giggling, pure joy radiating from every inch of his small body. Again, Mama. Again. Okay, baby. One more time. The love between them was so easy. So natural. So balanced. The mother got as much joy from pushing the swing as the child got from soaring through the air. When had my relationships with my children stopped being reciprocal? When had I become the one always pushing while they soared away from me? I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts. 3 children. 7 grandchildren. Dozens of extended family members and family friends I'd accumulated over the years. How many of those people would call me if I didn't call them first? I closed my phone without calling anyone. The silence that followed was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. For 2 weeks, none of my children contacted me. Not Sarah, despite our strained conversation about boundaries. Not Michael, who usually needed something by the 15th of every month. Not Jennifer, who was probably furious about the $5,000 I'd refused to send. Part of me wanted to crack. To call them and apologize and promise to be the endless font of resources they'd always known. Part of me missed the sound of their voices, even when those voices were asking for money. But a bigger part of me was discovering something I'd forgotten existed: peace. Without the constant anxiety about their next crisis or financial emergency, I slept better. Without the pressure to solve everyone else's problems, I had energy for my own life. I started taking painting classes at the Astoria Library. I joined a book club. I learned to make proper Greek coffee from Maria. I was becoming reacquainted with Helen. Not Helen the mother or Helen the provider or Helen the emergency contact. Just Helen. It was terrifying. And wonderful. Michael broke first. He called on a Tuesday evening, his voice tight with desperation. Mom, I need to talk to you. Okay. Not on the phone. Can I come over? I almost said yes immediately, the way I always had. But something made me pause. What do you want to talk about? It's complicated. Please, Mom. I'm in trouble. The old me would have told him to come right over. Would have already been making coffee and arranging the living room furniture to accommodate whatever crisis he was carrying. Instead, I said, I'm sorry to hear that. But I'm not available tonight. We can talk tomorrow. Tomorrow? Mom, this can't wait. Then I guess you'll need to find someone else to help you. The silence stretched between us like a wire pulled too tight. I don't understand what's happening to you, he said finally. You're not acting like yourself. Maybe I'm finally acting like myself for the first time in 30 years. He came over the next evening anyway, showing up at my door without calling first. He looked terrible. Unshaven, his expensive suit wrinkled, dark circles under his eyes. Mom, I need $50,000. I stared at him. I'm sorry, what? I know it's a lot. But I'm in real trouble. There was some irregularity at work. An investment that went bad. If I don't replace the money by Friday, I could go to jail. You stole money from your company. I borrowed it. I was going to pay it back before anyone noticed. But the market turned, and now, you embezzled $50,000 and lost it on bad investments. He flinched. It's not that simple. It sounds exactly that simple. Mom, please. I'm begging you. You're the only person I can ask. Where would I get $50,000, Michael? Do you think I have that kind of money just sitting around? You have assets. The apartment. You could take out another loan. Another loan. On my paid-off apartment. The only security I had left in the world. No. What do you mean, no? I mean no. I'm not going to mortgage my home to bail you out of a mess you created by stealing money. His face went through a series of expressions. Shock. Anger. Something that looked almost like hatred. I can't believe you're going to let me go to prison over money. You're going to prison because you committed a felony. I didn't do that to you. Some other you are. He slammed my door so hard the frame shook. I sat down at my kitchen table and put my head in my hands. This was it. This was where my refusal to be endlessly exploited led to my son facing criminal charges. But even through the guilt and heartbreak, I knew I'd made the right choice. $50,000 wouldn't teach Michael anything except that his problems could always be solved by someone else's sacrifice. It would destroy my financial security and probably still leave him vulnerable to making the same mistakes again. I loved him too much to enable him anymore. He figured out another solution, as it turned out. His wife's family loaned him the money in exchange for a significant stake in his house. It was humiliating for him, but not illegal. He kept his job and avoided prosecution. He didn't speak to me for 6 months. Sarah called me that summer, her voice artificially bright. Mom, how are you? We haven't talked properly in ages. I'm fine. How are you? Oh, you know. Busy with work. Listen, I was thinking maybe we could spend more time together. Maybe you could come stay with us for a few weeks this summer? The kids would love to see more of their grandmother. It sounded lovely. It also sounded expensive. That's sweet of you to offer. What did you have in mind? Well, I thought maybe you could help out with childcare while the kids are out of school. Nothing major, just keeping them entertained while I'm at work. And maybe you could contribute a little toward groceries since you'd be eating with us. There it was. The real offer. Not quality time with my daughter and grandchildren, but a job as an unpaid nanny who also helped with household expenses. How little is a little? I asked. I don't know, maybe $300 a week? That's less than we'd pay a professional babysitter. $300 a week for groceries. For a woman living on $1,200 a month in Social Security. I don't think that's going to work for me. What do you mean? I mean I can't afford to pay $300 a week for groceries on top of maintaining my own apartment. And I'm not interested in being a babysitter. They're your grandchildren, Mom. It's not babysitting when it's family. You're right. It's grandmothering. Which is something I do out of love, not as a financial arrangement. Her voice turned cold. I was trying to give you more time with the kids. No, you were trying to get free childcare and grocery money. If you want me to spend time with your children, invite me for dinner. Take them to the park where I can meet you. Plan activities we can all enjoy together. Don't hire me as help and pretend it's a favor. She hung up without saying goodbye. That night, I sat on my fire escape, looking out at the Manhattan skyline and thinking about the woman I used to be. The woman who would have said yes to Sarah's offer without question. Who would have emptied her bank account for Michael's legal troubles? Who would have sent Jennifer that $5,000 and found a way to make the money stretch? That woman had been generous to a fault. She'd also been miserable. I was learning the difference between generosity and self-destruction. Between love and enabling. Between being needed and being valued. The revelation came slowly, like watching the sun rise over Queens Boulevard. I didn't actually want to be needed anymore. I wanted to be wanted. Chosen. Loved for who I was, not what I could provide. Jennifer was the last holdout. She called in September, 9 months after our fight about the $5,000. Mom, she said, her voice small. I miss you. My heart clenched. Of all my children, Jennifer had always been the most emotional. The most vulnerable. I miss you too, sweetheart. I've been thinking about what you said. About being tired. And I realize I haven't been a very good daughter. I closed my eyes. This was what I'd been waiting for. An acknowledgement. An apology. A sign that at least one of my children understood what I'd been trying to tell them. I appreciate you saying that. I want to do better. I want us to have a real relationship. Not just, not just me calling when I need something. I'd like that too. So I was wondering if you'd like to come visit me? I could show you around LA. We could go to museums and galleries. Maybe take one of those sunset tours of Hollywood. It sounded wonderful. Almost too wonderful. That sounds lovely, Jennifer. When were you thinking? Well, Marcus got booked for this 3-week tour with his band. Starting next month. And I thought it might be nice to have company while he's gone. And there it was. Not an invitation born from love or the desire to spend time together, but from loneliness and convenience. I would be filling a gap in her social calendar, keeping her from rattling around her apartment alone. So you want me to visit while Marcus is away? Yeah. It would be perfect timing. For you. Well, yes. But for you too. You've never been to California. It would be a great experience. Who would pay for this great experience? There was a pause. I thought. I mean, you have savings, right? And it's not like you have a lot of expenses. Not a lot of expenses. Because rent and food and medication were imaginary costs that didn't affect real people. Jennifer, a trip to California would cost me 2 months of income. Maybe 3, if we're talking about hotels and restaurants and tours. I thought you could stay with me. And we don't have to do anything expensive. Stay with her. In her 1-bedroom apartment. Sleep on her couch for 3 weeks while she went to work every day, leaving me alone in a city where I didn't know anyone or anything. What would I do while you're at work? I don't know. Explore. Take walks. There are buses. Explore. At 72, in a strange city, with no car and no local knowledge and no companions. This doesn't sound like a vacation, Jennifer. It sounds like you want a house sitter who pays her own way. That's not fair. I'm trying to spend time with you. Are you? Because it sounds like you're trying to avoid being alone while Marcus is touring, and you thought having your mother around might be better than hiring a dog walker. The conversation deteriorated from there. Jennifer accused me of being suspicious and negative and impossible to please. I accused her of seeing me as a convenience rather than a person. We both hung up angry. That night, I called Dr. Rodriguez for an emergency session. I think I'm losing my family, I told her. Are you? Or are you discovering that what you thought was family was actually a series of transactional relationships? What's the difference? Either way, I'm alone. Helen, you've been alone for years. You just haven't admitted it to yourself. Being surrounded by people who only contact you when they need something isn't connection. It's exploitation. But they're my children. Yes. And you love them. But love doesn't mean accepting unacceptable behavior. Love sometimes means refusing to enable the people we care about to continue hurting us. What if they never speak to me again? Then you'll know where you truly stood in their lives. And you can stop spending your energy trying to earn love that was never freely given. It was harsh. It was also true. I went home and did something I'd never done before. I wrote each of my children a letter. Not an angry letter or a guilt-inducing letter, but an honest one. Dear Sarah, I wrote. I love you more than my own life. I always have. But somewhere along the way, our relationship became unbalanced. I became someone who gives, and you became someone who takes. I don't think either of us is happy with that arrangement anymore. I want to have a real relationship with you, one where we both contribute care and support. If you want that too, I'm here. But I won't continue to be your ATM or your convenience. Love, Mom. I wrote similar letters to Michael and Jennifer. I sealed them, stamped them, and walked to the mailbox on Northern Boulevard before I could change my mind. Then I waited. Michael was the first to respond. He called 2 days after my letter arrived. Mom, what the hell is this letter supposed to mean? It means exactly what it says. You're cutting us off? I'm establishing boundaries. Same thing. No, it's not. Cutting you off would mean refusing to have any relationship with you at all. Establishing boundaries means I'm willing to have a relationship, but only one that's healthy for both of us. This is because I wouldn't let you come on that Christmas trip, isn't it? The Christmas trip. The one I'd paid for entirely and been excluded from. No, Michael. This is because for 36 years, I've been giving and giving and giving, and none of you have ever asked what I might need in return. We never asked you to sacrifice for us. That stopped me cold. Are you serious right now? I'm completely serious. Nobody forced you to pay for our college or help with our weddings or send money every time we had problems. That was your choice. My choice. As your mother. Because I loved you and wanted you to have good lives. Exactly. So don't blame us for accepting what you freely offered. The word freely hung in the air between us. As if love and desperation and maternal obligation were the same as freedom. You're right, I said quietly. I did offer freely. But I assumed that someday, when you were adults with your own resources, you might offer something back. Care. Support. Even just genuine interest in my well-being. We care about you. When? When have you ever asked about my health without wanting something? When have you invited me to spend time with you without expecting me to pay for it? When have you called just to talk, not because you needed money or babysitting or help with some crisis? The silence stretched for so long I thought he'd hung up. I don't know, he said finally. I don't know either. That's the problem. Sarah's response came in the form of a forwarded email from her therapist's office. An appointment reminder for something called Family Systems Therapy. She was CC'd as the emergency contact for Helen Martinez. I wasn't Helen Martinez. I was Helen Kowalski. She'd sent me someone else's therapy appointment by mistake. I called her. Sarah, I think you forwarded me the wrong email. Oh, did I? Sorry, I'm trying to juggle so many things. What email? An appointment reminder for family therapy. Oh, that. No, that's right. I booked us a session together. I think we need professional help working through these communication issues. Communication issues. As if the problem was that we weren't expressing ourselves clearly, rather than that she'd spent decades treating me like a resource to be exploited. I already have a therapist. Well, this one specializes in family dynamics. I think it would be good for us to have a neutral space to discuss these tensions. What tensions, specifically? You know, the way you've been pulling back from family lately. Becoming less available. Less supportive. Less supportive. Because I'd stopped being an unlimited source of money and free labor. Sarah, I've been in therapy for months working on these exact issues. I don't need another therapist. I need a daughter who wants to spend time with me for reasons that have nothing to do with my bank account. That's not fair. What would be fair? I don't know, but this isn't it. You're punishing us for accepting help you offered. Help I offered. The way she said it made my sacrifices sound like casual favors. You're welcome for the college education. You're welcome for the wedding flowers. You're welcome for the Christmas vacation you excluded me from. I'm not punishing anyone. I'm protecting myself. From what? From disappearing completely into other people's needs. We never made it to family therapy. Sarah stopped responding to my calls after that conversation. Jennifer's response was the most painful. She showed up at my apartment unannounced on a Thursday evening in October. She'd been crying, her eyes were red and swollen, her mascara streaked down her cheeks. "Mom, please," she said when I opened the door. "Can we talk?" I let her in. Made tea. Sat across from her at my small kitchen table while she composed herself. "I read your letter about 50 times, she said. "And I keep trying to understand what I did wrong." "Jennifer, no, please. Let me finish. I know I've asked for money. I know I've leaned on you when things got tough. But doesn't that mean I trust you? Doesn't that mean you're important to me?" It was such a young way of looking at relationships. As if need and love were the same thing. Sweetheart, needing someone and loving someone aren't identical. But I do love you. I love you so much. I believe you. But love is more than a feeling, Jennifer. It's action. It's care. It's showing up for someone even when you don't need anything from them. I show up for you. When? She opened her mouth, then closed it. Opened it again. I call you all the time. To ask for help. To talk to you. To share my life. When did you last ask about my life? Another pause. Longer this time. I ask how you're doing. As a greeting. Not as a real question. I want to know how you're doing. Okay. How am I doing? She blinked at me. What do you mean? You said you want to know how I'm doing. So ask me. Really ask me. How are you doing, Mom? I'm lonely, I said. I'm 72 years old and I spend most of my time alone. I tutor neighborhood kids for pocket change because Social Security doesn't cover all my expenses. I haven't been on a vacation in 8 years because I can't afford one. I haven't been to a movie or a concert or a nice restaurant in months. I miss your father every single day, but I can't talk about him because it makes you uncomfortable. I'm proud of the woman I raised you to be, but I'm heartbroken that she doesn't seem to have any room in her life for me unless she needs something. Jennifer started crying again. Mom, I didn't know. You didn't know because you didn't ask. And when you did ask, you didn't listen to the answer. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I know you are. But sorry isn't enough anymore. I need change. What kind of change? I need you to be interested in my life. My thoughts. My experiences. I need you to ask about my day and care about the answer. I need you to invite me to do things that don't cost money and don't require me to provide childcare or house sitting or emergency funds. I can do that. Can you? Because that would mean fundamentally changing the way you see me. Not as a resource, but as a person. I've always seen you as a person. No, honey. You've seen me as a mother. And in your mind, mothers exist to give. But I'm a person who happened to become a mother. I have needs and dreams and limitations just like everyone else. We talked for 3 hours that night. Really talked, maybe for the first time in years. Jennifer asked me questions about my childhood, about my marriage to her father, about my hopes for my future. She told me about her work, her relationship with Marcus, her fears about money and success and growing older. It felt like a beginning. But beginnings are fragile things. 2 weeks later, Jennifer called asking if I could loan her first and last month's rent for a new apartment. It's a great opportunity, Mom. A bigger place in a better neighborhood. I just need help with the security deposit. How much? $4,000. But I'll pay you back as soon as I can. $4,000. 1/3 of my annual income. Jennifer, we just talked about this. About changing our relationship. This is different. This is a real emergency. Is it? Is not being able to afford a bigger apartment an emergency? I can't stay where I am. The building is being sold. So find an apartment you can afford without borrowing money. Those apartments are all in terrible neighborhoods. I live in a terrible neighborhood. That's different. How? You're older. You don't need as much. You don't need as much. Because older people don't deserve safety or comfort or nice things. I can't loan you $4,000, Jennifer. Can't or won't, both. I don't understand what's happened to you. You used to care about our happiness. I still care about your happiness. But I've learned the difference between helping someone and enabling them. If you can't afford this apartment, then it's not the right apartment for you. You're being selfish. Yes, I said. I'm being selfish. For the first time in my adult life, I'm being selfish. And it feels wonderful. She stopped calling after that. By Christmas, I hadn't heard from any of my children in weeks. No holiday plans were mentioned. No invitations extended. No gifts exchanged. I spent Christmas morning alone in my apartment, drinking coffee and reading a novel Maria had lent me from the cafe. It was quiet and peaceful and utterly without the drama that had characterized every family holiday for the past decade. Around noon, my phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Grandma Helen? It's Emma. Emma. Sarah's youngest daughter. 15 years old, smart as a whip, the only grandchild who'd ever voluntarily spent time with me. Emma. How are you, sweetheart? I'm okay. Listen, I'm not supposed to be calling you. Oh? Mom said you and she were having some kind of fight and that we shouldn't bother you right now. Some kind of fight. As if my refusal to be financially exploited was a petty disagreement. Your mom and I are working through some things. She said you're being stubborn. I might be. Good. That surprised me. Good. Grandma, I'm 15. I'm not stupid. I know what's been happening. What do you mean? I mean I've been watching this family treat you like an ATM for my entire life. And I've been waiting for you to get mad about it. My throat tightened. Emma, no, let me finish. Do you know what happened after that Christmas vacation you paid for? The one they didn't invite you to. What happened? Mom and Dad spent the whole week complaining about their student loans and talking about how they needed to ask you for more money. Uncle Michael kept saying you were probably happier at home anyway because travel is too stressful for old people. Aunt Jennifer took selfies by the fireplace and posted them with captions about family time and making memories. Nobody mentioned that you weren't there. Nobody seemed to care. I closed my eyes. Hearing it from Emma somehow made it worse. But I cared, Grandma. I kept thinking about you sitting alone in your apartment on Christmas while we were in that beautiful cabin you paid for. It wasn't right. Thank you for saying that. I tried to get them to invite you. I really did. But they just kept saying you'd be more comfortable at home. It's not your responsibility to fix adult problems, sweetheart. Maybe not. But it's my responsibility to tell you that not everyone in this family thinks you're just a bank account with feelings. I was crying now. Full, silent tears that felt like relief and heartbreak combined. I love you, Emma. I love you too. And Grandma? I'm proud of you. For what? For finally standing up for yourself. Even if it means being alone. But I wasn't alone, I realized as we talked for the next hour. Not completely. Emma was still there, choosing to call me, choosing to see me as a person worth loving for something other than financial support. One person. Out of a family of dozens. But it was enough to remind me that love, real love, still existed in the world. After Emma and I hung up, I made myself a proper Christmas dinner. Nothing fancy, just roasted chicken and vegetables, but prepared with care and eaten without guilt or anxiety about who might call needing something. I thought about Christmases past. The chaos and expense and exhaustion of trying to make everyone happy while ignoring my own needs completely. The pile of gifts I couldn't afford. The family dinners where I cooked all day and cleaned up alone while everyone else watched television. This Christmas was quieter. Simpler. Lonelier, yes, but also more peaceful than any holiday I'd experienced in years. That evening, I walked to Maria's cafe. She was closing up but invited me in for coffee and baklava. How was your Christmas? She asked. Different, I said. Good different or bad different? I'm not sure yet. She nodded. Change is like that. Feels terrible when you're in the middle of it. Only makes sense later, when you can see what you were changing into. What if I'm changing into someone bitter and alone? Are you bitter? I thought about it. No. Sad, sometimes. Confused. But not bitter. And are you alone? Mostly. But not completely? I thought about Emma's phone call. About my sessions with Dr. Rodriguez. About Maria herself, offering kindness to a lonely old woman. Not completely. Then you're not changing into someone bitter and alone. You're changing into someone who knows the difference between real connection and fake connection. That's wisdom, not bitterness. I went home that night and wrote in the journal Dr. Rodriguez had suggested I keep. For the first time, I wrote about hope instead of heartbreak. I am learning to love myself the way I loved my children, I wrote. Unconditionally. Without expecting anything in return. It's harder than I thought it would be. Spring came early that year. By March, the trees along Northern Boulevard were budding, and I could smell possibility in the air. I'd been attending Dr. Rodriguez's sessions regularly, had joined a support group for people recovering from family trauma, and had even started taking art classes at the Astoria Library. I was painting again for the first time since high school. Watercolors, mostly. Landscapes and street scenes around Queens. Nothing fancy, but mine. Created for no one's pleasure but my own. Emma called regularly now, always careful to use her own phone so her parents wouldn't know. She was applying to colleges, thinking about studying psychology. I want to understand family dynamics, she told me. I want to help people who are stuck in unhealthy patterns. That sounds wonderful, I said. I've been thinking about what you said. About love being action, not just feelings. I think I want to spend my life helping people figure out how to love better. My granddaughter. 15 years old and already wiser than her parents about the nature of healthy relationships. In April, something unexpected happened. Sarah called. Mom, she said, her voice formal. I think we need to talk. Okay. I've been thinking about what you said. About our relationship being unbalanced. And I realize you might have a point. It was the closest to an apology I was likely to get from Sarah. I waited for her to continue. I was wondering if we could start over. Try to build something different. What did you have in mind? I don't know. Maybe we could just talk sometimes? Without me needing anything? I'd like that. And maybe you could tell me about your life. Your real life, not just the parts that affect me and the kids. I'd like that too. We talked for an hour that day. About my art classes and therapy and the novels I'd been reading. About her work stress and marriage struggles and fears about raising teenagers in New York City. It felt tentative, like two strangers finding common ground, but it felt real in a way our conversations hadn't for years. Mom, she said before we hung up, I owe you some apologies. You don't owe me anything. Yes, I do. I took advantage of your generosity. I treated you like my personal emergency fund instead of my mother. And I made you feel invisible in your own family. Thank you for saying that. I don't know if I can promise to change overnight. I've gotten used to thinking of you as someone who exists to solve problems. But I want to try to see you differently. That's all I can ask for. It was a beginning. A fragile, uncertain beginning, but a beginning nonetheless. Michael and Jennifer remained silent. I grieved for those relationships while trying not to hold on to false hope that they would change. Dr. Rodriguez helped me understand that I could love my children without accepting unacceptable behavior from them. That healthy boundaries weren't punishment but self-preservation. You raised them to be independent, she reminded me. They're adults now. They get to choose how they want to relate to you. And you get to choose how you respond to those choices. By summer, my life had settled into a new rhythm. Gentle walks through Astoria Park. Coffee dates with Maria. Phone calls with Emma and increasingly comfortable conversations with Sarah. Art classes and book clubs and therapy sessions that felt like investments in my own growth rather than desperate attempts to fix problems I hadn't created. I was learning to be alone without being lonely. To fill my own time with activities that brought me joy rather than obligation. To value my own company enough to protect it from people who saw it as worthless. One evening in July, I was sitting on my fire escape, painting the sunset over the East River, when my phone rang. Jennifer. I almost didn't answer. Our last conversation had ended badly, and I'd grown protective of my newfound peace. But something made me pick up. Mom? Her voice was small, uncertain. Hi, Jennifer. I've been thinking about calling you for weeks. Okay. I miss you. I miss you too. I think I understand now. What you were trying to tell me. About the money and the using. I didn't respond. I'd learned that rushing to comfort people through their revelations often prevented them from reaching the full depth of their understanding. I went to therapy, she said after a moment. About my relationship with Marcus. But we ended up talking about family stuff too. About patterns and boundaries and how I treat people. How did that go? It was hard. Really hard. She made me realize that I've been treating you the way Marcus treats me. Like an inexhaustible resource. Someone who exists to make life easier. And how does that make you feel? Terrible. Ashamed. Like maybe I understand now why you pulled away. We talked for 2 hours that night. Not about money or problems or things Jennifer needed from me, but about real things. Her fears about her career. Her relationship patterns. Her memories of being young and feeling like my love was the only stable thing in her chaotic world. I think I got confused, she said. Between feeling safe with you and feeling entitled to everything you had to give. That's understandable. Is it forgivable? Jennifer, I've never stopped loving you. I just couldn't continue enabling you. I know the difference now. I think. What's the difference? Loving someone means wanting what's best for them, even if it's hard for you. Enabling someone means doing what makes you feel needed, even if it hurts them in the long run. My younger daughter, finally growing up at 28 years old. I'd like to try again, she said. If you'll let me. Try what again? Being your daughter. Really being your daughter, not just someone who takes from you. What would that look like? I don't know yet. But maybe we could figure it out together. We started slowly. Weekly phone calls where Jennifer asked about my week and listened to the answers. Invitations to art gallery openings that didn't cost anything and didn't require me to provide childcare or transportation money. Conversations about books and movies and life experiences that had nothing to do with crisis management. It was fragile, this new relationship we were building. Sometimes Jennifer would slip back into old patterns, asking for financial help or emotional labor that felt too familiar. But now she could catch herself. I'm doing it again, aren't I? She said one day after launching into a 20-minute monologue about her work problems while barely acknowledging that I'd mentioned my own struggles with my landlord's latest rent increase. A little bit. I'm sorry. Tell me about the landlord thing. And she listened. Really listened, asking follow-up questions and offering emotional support rather than immediate solutions or advice. Michael remained the holdout. Sarah was making good faith efforts to rebuild our relationship. Jennifer was learning to see me as a person rather than a resource. But Michael seemed determined to view my new boundaries as a personal betrayal. He sent a text message in August, "I hope you're happy. You destroyed this family over money." I showed the message to Dr. Rodriguez. "How does that make you feel?" she asked. Sad. But also angry. Because it's not about money, and he knows it. What is it about? Respect. Dignity. Being seen as a human being instead of a convenience. And are you wrong to want those things? No. Then Michael's anger is his problem to solve, not yours. I didn't respond to his text. For the first time in my life, I let one of my children have the last word without defending myself or explaining my position or trying to make peace at my own expense. The silence that followed felt different from the bitter silence of family conflict. It felt like peace. Summer turned to fall, and I prepared for my second Christmas as a woman who'd chosen herself over endless self-sacrifice. This year, the prospect didn't fill me with dread. Sarah invited me to Christmas dinner at her house. A real invitation, with no strings attached. Just dinner and conversation, she said. The kids want to show you their school projects, and I'd like you to meet David properly. David was her husband of 12 years, whom I'd barely spoken to despite being at their wedding and countless family gatherings. Jennifer asked if she could take me to the Christmas market at Bryant Park. My treat, she said. I want to buy you something nice and watch you enjoy it. Emma, now a high school junior, requested my help with a school project about intergenerational trauma and healing. I want to interview you about your experience, she said. About how you learned to set boundaries. For my psychology class. Even Maria invited me to her family's Christmas Eve celebration at the cafe. Your family now too, she said. Greek family. We adopt strays and feed them until they're too full to be sad. I was building a chosen family to complement the biological family I was slowly reclaiming. People who saw me as Helen, not as a service provider or emergency contact or source of financial support. Christmas morning, I woke up in my small apartment in Queens and felt something I hadn't experienced in decades: contentment. I was exactly where I belonged. That evening, as I sat with Sarah's family around their dinner table, I watched the interactions with new eyes. The way Sarah actually asked David about his day and listened to the answer. The way Emma engaged with her little brother without being asked to babysit him. The way everyone contributed to conversation and cleanup without one person carrying the entire emotional load. This was what healthy family relationships looked like. Reciprocal. Balanced. Based on genuine care rather than obligation or convenience. Grandma, Emma said as we were clearing dishes, thank you. For what? For showing us that love doesn't mean disappearing into other people's needs. Did I show you that? You showed me. And I think you're showing Mom too. I looked across the kitchen at Sarah, who was laughing at something David had said while drying dishes. She looked lighter somehow. Less burdened by the weight of managing everyone else's emotions. I think you might be right. Mom, Sarah said, walking over to us, I have something for you. She handed me a small wrapped box. Inside was a simple silver bracelet engraved with a single word, warrior. It reminded me of something Dad used to call you, she said. I found some of his old letters in the attic last month. He wrote about how proud he was of your strength. How you never let anything defeat you, even when life was hard. I touched the bracelet, feeling the weight of Robert's memory and the lightness of being seen clearly for the first time in years. Thank you, I said. It's perfect. Driving home that night in the taxi Sarah had insisted on paying for, I thought about the journey I'd taken this year. From a woman who'd lost herself completely in other people's needs to a woman who could receive love without feeling guilty about it. The transformation hadn't been easy. There had been months of loneliness, weeks of doubting whether I'd made the right choice, days when I missed the familiar rhythm of being needed even if it meant being used. But on the other side of that painful restructuring, I'd found something I'd forgotten existed, myself. I was Helen. Not Helen the mother or Helen the grandmother or Helen the emergency fund. Just Helen. A woman who painted watercolors and drank Greek coffee and had opinions about books and dreams about travel and boundaries that meant something. I was enough, all by myself. Complete without being constantly depleted by others. 3 weeks later, Michael called. Mom, he said, his voice rough. I've been thinking. Okay. About what you said. About respect and dignity and seeing you as a person. I waited. I think I owe you an apology. What kind of apology? The real kind. The kind where I admit I was wrong and you were right. He paused, struggling with words that clearly didn't come easily. I treated you like a bank account with feelings. I thought because you were my mother, you owed me whatever I needed whenever I needed it. And when you stopped giving me everything I asked for, I got angry at you for changing the rules instead of recognizing that the rules were fucked up to begin with. Michael, no, let me finish. Please. I've been going to therapy too. Court ordered, initially, because of the work thing. But then I kept going because I realized I had no idea how to have healthy relationships with anyone. And what have you learned? That I'm 38 years old and I've never asked my mother how she's doing and actually listened to the answer. That I've taken your financial support for granted while never offering emotional support in return. That I've treated your love like an inexhaustible resource instead of a gift that needed to be cherished. I was crying now. Not from sadness, but from relief. My son, my stubborn, defensive, entitled son, was finally seeing me clearly. I don't know if I can change overnight, he continued. I don't know if I can become the son you deserved all along. But I'd like to try. If you'll let me. What would that look like? I don't know yet. Maybe we could start with me asking about your life and actually caring about the answer? I'd like that. How are you, Mom? Really, how are you? For the next hour, I told him. About my art classes and therapy and friendship with Maria. About the fear and exhilaration of learning to live alone without being lonely. About the grief of losing the family I thought I had and the joy of discovering the family I actually wanted. He listened. Really listened, asking questions that showed he was paying attention, offering support that felt genuine rather than perfunctory. I'm proud of you, he said as we were ending the call. For what? For refusing to let us treat you badly anymore. Even when it meant losing us for a while. I never wanted to lose any of you. You didn't lose us. You saved us. From becoming people who only knew how to take without giving anything back. That night, I sat at my kitchen table and wrote in my journal, today I got my son back. Not the son who needed me to be smaller so he could feel bigger, but the son who sees me as I am and loves me anyway. Spring came again, my second spring as a woman who belonged to herself first. Emma was accepted to Sarah Lawrence with a partial scholarship for psychology majors. Jennifer had saved enough money to move to a nicer apartment without borrowing anything from anyone. Michael had been promoted at work and was slowly rebuilding his professional reputation. Sarah had started therapy herself, working through her own patterns of people-pleasing and boundary confusion. You were my model for how to be a woman, she told me. But the model was broken. You taught me that love meant self-sacrifice. I'm learning now that love actually means self-respect. I was proud of all of them. Proud of their growth, their willingness to examine their own behavior, their commitment to building healthier relationships. But mostly, I was proud of myself. I'd spent 71 years believing that my value came from what I could provide to others. I'd equated love with depletion, care with self-destruction, family with endless giving without receiving. At 73, I was finally learning different lessons. Love multiplies when it's shared equally. Care becomes sustainable when it flows both ways. Family is strongest when everyone contributes according to their ability and receives according to their need. I was still Helen the mother and Helen the grandmother. But I was also Helen the artist and Helen the friend and Helen the woman who'd learned to choose herself without guilt. On Mother's Day, all 3 of my children came to my apartment in Queens. Not to ask for anything or to be fed or entertained, but simply to spend time with me. Jennifer brought flowers she'd grown herself in her new apartment's tiny balcony garden. Sarah brought homemade cookies and stories about her latest cases. Michael brought photo albums, old pictures of our family from when the children were small. We spent the afternoon looking through those photos, remembering moments I'd thought were lost forever. But now I could see them differently. Not as evidence of how much I'd sacrificed, but as proof of how much love had actually existed in our imperfect family. Look at this one, Emma said, pointing to a picture of me at her 5th birthday party. I was kneeling behind her as she blew out candles, my arms wrapped around her, both of us laughing. You look so happy, Grandma. I studied my own face in the photo. She was right. Despite the exhaustion and financial stress and constant worry, I did look happy. Because in that moment, love had been freely given and joyfully received. I was happy, I said. Even when things were hard, there was always love. There's still love, Michael said quietly. Just healthier love now. As the sun set over Queens that evening, I sat on my fire escape watching my family clean up my kitchen together. No one asked me to do the dishes. No one expected me to organize or manage or take care of logistics. They simply worked together as adults who cared about each other. Maria, the cafe owner, had been right. Change felt terrible in the middle but made sense in the end. I'd changed from a woman who loved until she disappeared into a woman who loved from a place of wholeness. My children had changed too. From people who took love for granted to people who understood its value. We'd all learned the same essential lesson: real love doesn't diminish the giver. It sustains everyone involved. That night, I wrote the final entry in the journal I'd been keeping since this journey began. I am 73 years old, and I am just beginning to understand myself. I am a mother, but I am not only a mother. I am a woman with dreams and boundaries and needs that matter. I am worthy of love that doesn't cost me my sense of self. I am enough, exactly as I am, without giving away pieces of my soul to purchase affection from people who should love me freely. It took me 7 decades to learn these truths. But learning them has saved my life. 6 months later, I was featured in a small article in the Queen's Gazette about older adults pursuing new artistic endeavors. The reporter had seen my paintings at a local gallery showing and wanted to write about people who'd found creative fulfillment later in life. What inspired you to start painting again? She asked. I remembered that I was a person with interests and talents beyond what I could do for other people, I said. I spent so many years being useful that I forgot how to be myself. The article was only 3 paragraphs long, but it generated dozens of emails from other older adults, mostly women, who recognized themselves in my story. I've been everyone's emergency contact for 40 years, one woman wrote. Reading about your experience gave me permission to resign from that job. My children only call when they need money, wrote another. I thought that was normal until I realized I never call anyone when I need money because I don't believe I deserve help. Thank you for showing me that saying no doesn't make me a bad mother, wrote a third. It makes me a whole person. Dr. Rodriguez suggested I consider facilitating a support group for people recovering from family enmeshment and financial exploitation. You have wisdom that could help others, she said. Hard-won wisdom. I started the group in January, meeting twice a month in the community room at the Astoria Library. We called ourselves Boundaries and Beyond, and within 3 months we had a waiting list. The stories were all different in their details but remarkably similar in their themes. Adult children who saw parents as ATMs. Spouses who equated love with endless tolerance for unacceptable behavior. Extended family members who showed up only when they needed something. People who'd lost themselves so completely in other people's needs that they'd forgotten they had needs of their own. The hardest part, said Margaret, a 70-year-old woman whose son had stolen her retirement savings, is learning to trust my own judgment again. I gave him money so many times when my gut said no. Now I don't know if I can trust myself to make good decisions. Trusting ourselves is a practice, I told her. Like any other skill, it gets stronger the more we use it. But what if I make mistakes? Then you'll make mistakes as a whole person instead of as someone else's convenience. That's still an improvement. People laughed, recognizing the truth in that statement. We'd all been trained to believe that our mistakes were more catastrophic than other people's deliberate exploitation of our resources. By summer, the support group had become one of my greatest sources of joy. Watching people reclaim their sense of self, establish boundaries, and rebuild relationships from positions of strength rather than depletion, it felt like the most meaningful work I'd ever done. Emma, now starting her senior year of high school, interviewed several group members for an extended research project on family systems and boundary development. Her paper was so insightful that her teacher asked her to present it at a regional psychology conference for high school students. Grandma, she said after her presentation, I think I want to do what you're doing. Help people learn to love themselves. That's beautiful, sweetheart. But remember, you can't love anyone else well until you love yourself first. Is that what you're teaching people? How to love themselves? I'm teaching people how to recognize the difference between being loved and being used. Once they can see that difference, loving themselves becomes much easier. At the conference, I met other women who were doing similar work around the country. Therapists and support group leaders and life coaches who specialized in helping people recover from emotional and financial exploitation by family members. It's an epidemic, said Dr. Patricia Williams, a therapist from Chicago. Especially among older adults, particularly women, who were raised to believe that good mothers and wives give until there's nothing left to give. What do you think causes it? I asked. Cultural messaging about selflessness as a virtue. Economic instability that makes family members see each other as resources rather than relationships. And a fundamental misunderstanding of what healthy love actually looks like. What does healthy love look like? Reciprocal. Sustainable. Based on genuine care rather than obligation or convenience. It enhances both people rather than depleting one to benefit the other. Her words stayed with me long after the conference ended. Reciprocal. Sustainable. Enhancing rather than depleting. That fall, I received an invitation that surprised me. The New York State Office for the Aging wanted me to speak at their annual conference about financial exploitation of older adults by family members. Your story represents hope, said the program coordinator. So many older adults feel trapped in these dynamics. They need to see that change is possible, even later in life. I accepted the invitation, though public speaking terrified me. The night before the conference, I called Emma for moral support. Grandma, you've been speaking to groups for months now. This is just a bigger group. This is different. These are professionals. People with degrees and certifications. And you're a person with experience. That's worth just as much. She was right. My story mattered not because I was an expert on family systems, but because I'd lived through the destruction and reconstruction of those systems. The following morning, I stood before an audience of social workers, therapists, legal advocates, and elder services professionals, and I told my story. The whole story, from the Christmas vacation that started it all to the support group that had become my life's work. When I finished, the room was silent for a long moment. Then a woman in the front row started clapping. Others joined in until the entire room was applauding. During the Q&A session, audience members shared their own observations about family financial exploitation. The hardest part, said one social worker, is that the victims often resist help because they're so afraid of losing the relationship, even when the relationship is clearly harmful. I understand that fear, I said. I lived with it for years. But what I learned is that relationships based on exploitation aren't worth saving. And often, when you stop enabling unhealthy behavior, you create space for healthy relationships to develop. What advice would you give to someone who's just beginning to recognize these patterns in their own family? Start small. Say no to one request. Set one boundary. Trust your instincts when something feels wrong. And remember that you're not responsible for other people's emotional reactions to your self-care. After my presentation, dozens of people approached me with their own stories. Adult children who'd been financially exploited by elderly parents. Middle-aged adults who were still being emotionally manipulated by aging relatives. Professional caregivers who'd watched families destroy themselves through financial entanglement and boundary confusion. You've started something important, said Dr. Williams, who'd driven up from Chicago to attend. People need to hear these stories. They need to know they're not alone. That night, I sat in my hotel room overlooking the Hudson River and thought about the journey that had brought me here. 2 years ago, I'd been a lonely woman eating Christmas dinner alone because my family found me too burdensome to include in the vacation I'd paid for. Now I was someone whose experience could help others avoid or escape similar situations. The transformation felt miraculous. Not because my circumstances had changed dramatically, I was still a 74-year-old woman living on a modest income in Queens, but because my relationship with myself had been completely rebuilt. I was no longer a woman who purchased love through financial sacrifice. I was a woman who commanded respect through self-respect. I flew home the next day to find messages from local news organizations wanting to interview me about elder financial abuse. Apparently, someone had recorded my conference presentation and shared it on social media. It was being viewed and shared by thousands of people. I had no idea this was so common, one commenter wrote. My mother has been supporting my brother's family for 15 years. I thought she was just being generous. This is exactly what happened to my grandmother, wrote another. She gave my uncle everything she had, and he put her in a nursing home the minute her money ran out. I'm 68 and I just realized I've been financially abusing my own mother for 20 years. This video is making me sick to my stomach, but I needed to hear it. The responses were overwhelming. Heartbreaking and hopeful in equal measure. I started getting invitations to speak at senior centers and community organizations across the tri-state area. Each presentation generated more emails from people who recognized themselves in my story. Would you consider writing a book? Asked a literary agent who'd attended one of my talks. There's clearly a need for this message. A book. I'd never considered myself a writer, but I had certainly lived a story worth telling. I spent the next 6 months writing, with Emma's help editing and organizing my thoughts. The book wasn't a memoir exactly, but a guide for people who wanted to rebuild relationships from positions of strength rather than depletion. From ATM to Human, Learning to Love Without Losing Yourself, was published by a small press that specialized in books about family relationships and personal development. The book launch was held at Maria's Cafe, surrounded by people who'd become my chosen family over the past 3 years. Sarah, Michael, and Jennifer were all there, along with Emma and several members of my support group. 2 years ago, I said during my short reading, I thought my value as a person depended on what I could give to others. I measured my worth in dollars spent and favors granted and needs met, regardless of my own capacity or well-being. I believed that love meant disappearing into other people's requirements and that asking for care in return was selfish. I looked around the room at faces that had become dear to me, people who'd learned to see me as a complete person rather than a resource to be tapped. I was wrong about all of that. Love doesn't require self-destruction. Care should flow both ways. And asking for respect isn't selfish, it's necessary for any relationship that hopes to survive. The book found its audience slowly but steadily. Word of mouth from readers to friends. Recommendations from therapists to clients. Book clubs dominated by older women who'd spent decades giving too much and receiving too little. I started hearing from people across the country whose families had transformed after reading my story. My daughter actually asked about my weekend plans, wrote one woman from Oregon. She didn't need me to babysit or loan her money or solve any problems. She just wanted to know what I was doing for fun. I told my son I couldn't give him money for a new car, wrote another from Texas. Instead of getting angry, he asked if I wanted to have lunch with him next week. No agenda, just time together. My mother spent 40 years being everyone's emergency fund, wrote a younger woman from California. After reading your book, I realized I'd never once asked her what she needed from me. Last week I took her to a spa day, my treat. She cried. These responses reminded me why the difficult work of transformation had been worth it. Not just for my own well-being, but for the ripple effects that spread to other families ready to choose health over dysfunction. 5 years after that devastating Christmas exclusion, I received an invitation that would have been unimaginable back then. Jennifer was getting married, a real wedding this time, not a casual ceremony or destination event, and she wanted me to be her matron of honor. I can't think of anyone else I'd rather have standing beside me, she said when she called with the invitation. You taught me what commitment really means. Not just staying no matter how badly you're treated, but loving yourself enough to demand better. The wedding was beautiful. Simple but elegant, held in a small chapel in Brooklyn with a reception at a nearby restaurant. I wore a dress I'd bought specifically for the occasion, not from a thrift shop, but from a real department store, paid for with money I'd saved from my book royalties. During the reception, Jennifer asked me to give a toast. When Jennifer was born, I said, looking out at friends and family gathered around small candlelit tables, I made her a promise. I promised to love her unconditionally, to support her dreams, and to help her become the best version of herself. I paused, gathering my thoughts. What I didn't understand then was that helping someone become their best self sometimes means refusing to enable their worst impulses. Real love means caring enough to set boundaries. It means modeling self-respect so the people you love can learn what they deserve from others. I looked at Jennifer, radiant in her simple white dress, holding hands with Marcus, who'd finally grown into the partner she deserved. Jennifer taught me that as much as I taught her. She learned to ask for what she needed instead of demanding what she wanted. She learned to give care as freely as she received it. And because she learned those things, she found a love that enhances her life instead of diminishing it. The toast was met with applause and more than a few tears. Later, as we were cleaning up, Sarah approached me. Mom, she said, I have something to tell you. Okay. David and I have been talking about something. About how grateful we are for the changes in our family. About how much healthier our relationships have become since you started setting boundaries. I'm glad to hear that. We want to do something to show our appreciation. Not a gift or a gesture, but something ongoing. What did you have in mind? We want to set up a fund. For your support group and your speaking engagements. So you don't have to worry about covering costs when you're helping other people. I was speechless. My daughter, my successful attorney daughter who'd once treated me like a personal bank account, was offering to financially support my work helping others escape financial exploitation. Sarah, that's incredibly generous, but, no buts. You've given us so much over the years. Not just money, but the example of how to love with dignity. This is our chance to invest in something that matters to you. Michael overheard our conversation and joined us. I want to contribute too, he said. And I've been thinking about other ways to support what you're doing. Such as? My company has a corporate social responsibility program. They provide funding for nonprofits that address elder issues. I think your work would qualify. My children, all 3 of my children, were volunteering to support my mission of helping people establish healthy boundaries in family relationships. The irony wasn't lost on me. By refusing to let them use me financially, I'd taught them the joy of giving freely chosen support. That night, I sat in my apartment in Astoria, the same small apartment I'd lived in for years, but now filled with paintings and plants and books that reflected my own interests rather than other people's needs, and marveled at the completeness of the circle. I'd started this journey believing that love required self-sacrifice. I'd ended it understanding that love requires self-respect. I'd begun as a woman who measured her value by what others took from her. I'd become a woman who understood her worth independent of what she could provide. I'd failed my way into wisdom, and that wisdom had not only saved my own life but was now helping save others. Emma, now a sophomore at Sarah Lawrence studying psychology and social work, called me that evening. "Grandma, I've been thinking about something." "What's that?" "Do you remember when I was 15 and I called you on that Christmas when everyone excluded you from the vacation?" "Of course. I told you I was proud of you for finally standing up for yourself. But I don't think I really understood then what that meant." "What do you think it meant?" "I think it meant you chose to save yourself so you could save the rest of us too. If you'd kept enabling everyone, we all would have stayed stuck in those patterns forever." My granddaughter, 19 years old and already understanding family dynamics better than most adults. "I think you might be right. I'm writing my senior thesis about intergenerational change in family systems. About how one person's courage to break unhealthy patterns can transform an entire family across generations." "What have you learned so far?" "That boundaries aren't walls that keep people out. They're foundations that healthy relationships can build on." After we hung up, I opened my laptop and began writing my second book. This one would focus on the ripple effects of healthy boundary setting, the ways that one person's commitment to self-respect could catalyze positive change throughout an entire family system. But first, I wrote in my journal, a practice I'd maintained throughout this entire journey. Today I am 75 years old. I am a mother and grandmother, but I am not defined by those roles. I am an artist, a writer, a teacher, a friend. I am a woman who learned to love herself without guilt and to accept love without conditions. My relationships with my children are not perfect, but they are real. Based on genuine care rather than financial entanglement. Built on mutual respect rather than one-sided sacrifice. I spent 7 decades believing I had to earn love through depletion. Now I know that real love is freely given and joyfully received. It multiplies rather than diminishes. It heals rather than harms. I have enough. I am enough. I always was enough. The next morning, I woke up in my small Queens apartment, made Greek coffee the way Maria had taught me, and sat at my easel to paint the sunrise over the East River. For the first time in my adult life, I belonged completely to myself. And from that place of wholeness, I had more love to give than I'd ever imagined possible. As I write this story for you now, 6 years have passed since that devastating Christmas exclusion that began my journey towards self-respect. 6 years since my son told me I should have stayed home so they could have some free time. Those words, which once felt like a knife to my heart, now feel like a gift. They woke me up to a truth I'd been avoiding for decades. I was being used by the people I loved most. But here's what I want you to understand, what I hope you'll take from my story if it resonates with anything in your own life. Being used by family doesn't mean you're worthless. It means you're generous to a fault. Being excluded doesn't mean you're unlovable. It means you're surrounded by people who've forgotten how to love well. Setting boundaries doesn't make you selfish. It makes you sustainable. Saying no doesn't make you a bad mother, father, daughter, son, or spouse. It makes you a whole person. And sometimes, often, when you stop enabling unhealthy behavior, you create space for healthy relationships to grow. My children and I love each other differently now. Better. More honestly. They don't need me to solve all their problems, and I don't need them to validate my existence through their crises. We choose each other. Every conversation. Every visit. Every shared meal or family celebration. And that choice, freely made by people who respect each other's boundaries and humanity, is worth more than all the forced obligations and financial entanglements I spent decades mistaking for love. Have you ever felt like an ATM with feelings? Have you ever loved someone so much that you disappeared into their needs? Do you know someone who's been where I was, giving and giving and giving until there was nothing left to give? Tell me in the comments. Your story matters. Your experience matters. You matter. And if this story has touched something in your heart, if it's helped you see your own relationships more clearly, please like this video and subscribe. Share it with someone who might need to hear that they're worth more than what they can provide to others. Because the message that saved my life might just save theirs too. Love doesn't require self-destruction. Care should flow both ways. And you, exactly as you are, with all your needs and dreams and boundaries, you are enough. Thank you for letting me share my story. Thank you for seeing me as more than just a voice on your screen. Thank you for understanding that behind every story of transformation is a person who chose to save themselves so they could love others better. Remember, you teach people how to treat you. Make sure the lesson you're teaching is one you can live with.